Today we have with us the executive editor of the Associated Press Worldwide, and I wanted to get a couple of questions from the audience about that photo. But just to prime the pump a little bit, I was going to ask Kathleen Carroll. Come on up, Kathleen. I was going to ask Kathleen Carroll to answer an interesting question, which is, what is it that you find that people did not know about that picture when they were taking your name in vain?
The thing that most people think, that's right, I'll try not to move too much, we'll be little Siamese twins here. The thing that most people think that isn't really true is that we asked the family's permission and then ignored their wishes. Does everybody think that? Did anybody think that we ignored the family's wishes in running the picture of Joshua Bernard? Right. We didn't ask them. That decision, I wouldn't ever ask any parent that. That decision was mine to make, and I made it in the end. The other thing that people, what parent wants to make that decision? We told them we were going to. We told them that we were actually while we were thinking about it, and I can explain the thinking if you like, and we told them we were likely going to move it, and we didn't want them to see it on the front page of a newspaper. We wanted to give them a chance to look at it in private if they wanted to, or not if they didn't want to, but we felt it was, I'm a parent, you're a parent, who would want to see their son that way as a surprise?
So, we have a little bit here for a couple of questions about the Associated Press decision on that photo.
What was the family's reaction to it?
What was the family's reaction to it?
Well, not surprisingly, the father, who also is a Marine and spoke for the family, did not want us to run it and was quite angry with us after the fact. But we kept talking with him. We went to see him in person with the copy of the picture while we were contemplating this, and he was quite vocal, saying, nobody should have to see their son this way. Our view, of course, was that Joshua was like a lot of young men and women who were fighting a war on your behalf, on behalf of the taxpayer. Their fighting of that war was a public act, and sadly his wounding and ultimate death was a public act. The other thing that most people think is that it's normal for us to take pictures of people who are dying, and it's actually not. It's extremely unusual. We take a lot of pictures of bodies, and you've seen a lot of pictures of dead Afghan citizens, dead Iraqi citizens. It's very unusual to find somebody from the United States military. Here's the other thing you probably don't know. The Defense Secretary wrote a big letter and yelled and hollered and screamed at my boss, Tom Curley, saying he wanted us to withdraw the picture. Well, you know what? He knew already that the picture had been out, and had been out for 8 hours. It was a very smart political act on his part to rush to the defense of the families whose sons and husbands and brothers and fathers and mothers and sisters and so on that he represents. But he knew that was not a request that could or would be met.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
No, he was yelling at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had shown the Pentagon the picture at 7 in the morning before we transmitted it at 8.
Other questions for Kathleen Carroll, the executive editor of the Associated Press? Sir.
Are there any kind of circumstances that include withdrawal of photos that you ran earlier?
Are there any circumstances under which the AP would withdraw a photo that it had already sent out?
The only time we withdraw a photo is if we find that there's something wrong, incorrect, or dubious about it. And we spent several weeks thinking about the story we wanted to tell. We could have moved the picture the minute we got it, assuming we only waited a couple of days to be sure that his family had been notified, because you know how that works. We know about the injury and death before the family does. But we wanted him to be a person, and we spent several weeks reporting about his life so that when you saw that picture of him, you had available to you lots of information about who this young man was.
How often does a photo from out in the field get kicked up to you for review?
Not very often.
Let me get some context for these guys. How many employees do you oversee worldwide?
About 2,900, 2,850.
So how many times do you see a photo pre-publication?
Not very often, but there are layers of people in authority down at the field and you know, up through the organization who are making decisions all the time about controversial photos. But because of the nature of this one, because of the nature of this one, we wanted to do something more with it, and I got involved. And I was the one who said, let's do more on him and make him a person and not have him be just this image without any context. But we spent a long time really blowing that picture way up. And there might have been circumstances where we might not have run it. The fact that it was taken at low light and from a distance gave you a little bit of distance from the intimacy of this young man's bleeding to death. If there had been a close-up shot of his face and it was in terrible agony, I think we would have had we talked about all the different things that might have contributed to a different decision. You know, a really tight shot of any man, woman, child in their last moments, something very intimate. That I think we might have we would have had a different kind of conversation. Not sure how it would have turned out, but it would have certainly changed how we felt about the picture.
Any other questions? Ari.
Say what you mean by, the question is, does national security ever play in? You are always going to have more outcry, especially in the early days, because people who are angry are going to be more vocal than people who think it was the right decision. But we're in this for the long haul. You know, we've been shooting pictures of people in war zones since the Civil War, and I'm not making that up. So, you know, even now, a year later, not a year later, 9 months later, the pendulum has swung a little bit, and as we've talked more about the decision, even his father has come to a different place. You know, I thought his father was going to be mad at us until the end of time. He'll never agree with the decision that we make, and I wouldn't ask him to, but he understands it more. It doesn't take away the pain of him losing his son, which of course is never going to go away. But I think other people who weren't involved in the conversation at the time begin to understand it. And you know, you all have heard about it, discussed it, and you'll think about it differently than you might have when you first heard about it last September. Thank you very much.